We're on 18.9, it's biomass transfers. Let's have a look at our starter. So we've said how much of the light from the sun, in other words, the incident energy, is used by plants for photosynthesis. Well, let me just mention this word incident energy. That is on your specification. What we mean by that is all the light coming and hitting that leaf. You might have come across this word in year 8 physics when you were learning about the incident ray and the reflected ray. However, now it's in biology, so make sure you know what it means. Stop the video and write a definition for the incident energy. So in answer to our question, it turns out to be 1% of all the light that hits that leaf that is then involved in photosynthesis and the build-up of biomass for the plant. How is that? All that light, 1%? Let's have a little think. Well, like anything, when light hits it, some of that light, some of that instant energy is reflected. Also, we know the leaf has a large surface area, and it's the chloroplasts that absorb the light energy. But the whole leaf isn't covered by chloroplasts, they're in there. Some of that light will miss the chloroplasts completely and pass through, and so we don't get that energy. Remember, light that we see is a spectrum of different wavelengths of light, and so not all of the wavelengths of light are absorbed by the chloroplast. So some light is simply the wrong wavelength. The other reason why not all the light hitting that leaf will be used in photosynthesis is because other factors may be limiting. We may be limiting the carbon dioxide levels, the temperature may be limiting, so not all of the light is being utilised. Stop the video and write the question. Explain why only 1% of the incident energy that hits the leaf is used for photosynthesis. Rewind the video and listen to those 4 reasons again and get a note of them down. Food chains are really inefficient. From the energy, from that 1% that's gone into the plant, as the animal that eats that moves to the next level, and the animal that eats that in the next level continues, as the food chain gets longer, only about 10% of the energy each time is passed on. Now, you've heard me use the word level. The actual proper word for that is trophic level, a level of energy for consumers as you pass through a food chain. So producers are 1 trophic level, primary consumers are the 2nd trophic level, tertiary consumers are the 3rd trophic level, and of course tertiary consumers are the 4th trophic level. The video and write down a definition for what is meant by a trophic level. We know that the longer the food chain, the more inefficient it is. In other words, the original energy that was put into biomass at this end is less as it passes on to the final, the top carnivore, the tertiary consumer at this end. There are organisations like Compassion in World Farming where they actually talk about just eat less meat, because the shorter the food chain, the more efficient that energy transfer is. Why is it that the shorter the food chain, the more efficient it is? Where is the energy lost each time it's passed from one trophic level to another? So biomass is lost in feces. You see this if you see some horse manure on the floor. You can see it's eaten that plant, but there's still lots of the plant in there, undigested material. The herbivores can't digest the whole amount that they eat. Most herbivores don't have the enzymes they need to digest that cellulose. Remember, cellulose is the plant cell wall. So they can't break it down, they can't digest it, and therefore it is egested. It's gone in one end and out of the other. It's egestion and not excretion, because of course excretion is removal of products that have been involved in metabolic reactions. You've got to consider your body as a tube, and putting food in one end and waste coming out the other hasn't actually entered your body. It's gone through the centre of that tube. So meat eaters do have the enzymes to digest the protein that is contained in meat. And because of that, we need to eat a lot less. If you look at the amount of time a cow or a horse spends eating in a field, we don't do that. And that's because the food that we do eat, we can digest, we can absorb, and we can use the energy from it. That means we also make a lot less waste. And that's why horse manure, Cow pats are massive. However, we do know from chapter 9, where we looked at respiration, that if you eat too much protein, too many amino acids, we do have to remove the nitrogenous part, and we make urea, and that is lost in urine. So we have excreted that because it's been made in body cells. Urea is made in the liver and it's excreted by the kidneys. So far we've said that we're going to lose biomass from one trophic level into the next trophic level because that organism is going to make feces and that organism is going to make waste. Of course, in humans, fibre is egested from the human system. That is also made of plant cell walls because we can't digest it. We also lose energy as we move from one trophic level to another because we move about. When we move, we need our muscles to contract, and this uses a lot of energy. So for any organism that moves around, if it's then eaten, the energy that's gone into that organism isn't going to be passed on to the next trophic level. And it's this contraction of the muscles, this movement of organisms, which is why in industrial farming now we tend to cage animals in. We cage them in so they can't move. If they can't move, they can't waste the energy that we're feeding them, the energy that we're paying for to actually feed them. And this is why free range is so much more expensive, because they are moving about. You need a lot more space to house them so they can naturally roam. A lot of the energy they're consuming is lost because they're moving, they're contracting their muscles.
Additionally, mammals maintain a constant body temperature. This means when the environmental temperature gets low, we use respiration to generate heat. The same is true for all mammals and birds, which are considered to be warm-blooded. And so livestock that lose heat energy need to respire at a higher rate to generate heat energy to keep warm. Therefore, climate control in industrial farming increases yield and helps to keep prices down. Just get ready to pause the video and consider what you would write to represent these energy losses.
So we've got energy is lost as heat from cellular respiration. Biomass is used to provide energy for movement. Biomass is lost in urine. Biomass is turned into new horse biomass because, of course, the horse is growing. It might be developing muscle. It might be repairing its tissue. And biomass is lost in its feces. So stop the video and write down a list of all the reasons why energy from one trophic level isn't passed on to the next trophic level. Losses in waste material, muscular activity from movement, and at keeping your body temperature at the optimum for you. So let's just have a look at this question here. It says, in a marine habitat, which organism would produce the biomass for the rest of the food chain? We know that that would be algae. Algae are photosynthetic, single-celled organisms, and so they are producers. Interesting that it mentions decomposers here, because decomposers very much come at the very end of the food chain, but we don't normally include them on food pyramids. Although they are vital for that food chain because they break down the very waste that organisms put out into the smallest constituents that can then go back into the soil, be used by producers once again as mineral ions. How about this question? Marine food chains can be a lot longer than terrestrial food chains. Which of the statements are reasons for this? And the answer for this one is that the size of the organisms in the marine environment are a lot smaller. So we start off with microscopic organisms that are eaten by other organisms that are small. The next one is small, and so there's just more smaller organisms along the way. So if you've got the textbook, if you could do the summary questions on page 303, and remember that the key points on that double page spread are actually taken from the specification. So ideally you will go to the specification and you will highlight the parts that we've talked about today. However, if you're not that student, at least read through the key points on that double page spread. And here is a great question related to what we've just talked about. It says the table gives the energy output for some agricultural food chains. So there we can see the food chain. They all start with a cereal crop, and cereal crop to pigs to humans, cereal crop to cattle to humans. So the energy available to humans from the food chain, you can see that the one that goes through the cattle is a lot smaller than the one where the humans just eat the cereal crop. And it says, explain why the food chain cereal crop gives humans far more energy than the other two food chains. So in this, what we need to do is we need to discuss that the longer the food chain, the less efficient it is.